to find Jake here so that I can make sure he's spotlighted. He is here and got him spotlighted for everyone. Um, isn't it amazing how this sort of worked out with the week where we cannot be live? Uh, but he agreed to do our presentation this morning about his new book, which again is the Boundaries workbook, which I bought when it came out because it looked so interesting. Jake Morrill has been the lead minister of the Oak Ridge Unitarian Universalist Church since 2003. As he steps down this summer, he'll move into full-time leadership coaching and consulting with organizations seeking better workplace relationships and emotional maturity. He and his wife, Molly, have 2 kids in Oak Ridge schools. His book is the Boundaries Workbook, and it came out last week, I think on April 5th. So Jake, thank you for doing this today. I'll turn it over to you and you can bring up your slides and talk about your new book and what motivated you to do it a little bit too.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tony. And good morning, everyone. Before I get going, I just, when I talk with Rotary clubs, I always pause to say thank you. In 1999, thanks to District 6780, I went to South Africa and spent a year there as an ambassadorial scholar. And
Wow.
Your generosity supporting the ambassadorial scholarship made a turnaround difference in my life and really has charted the course for the years to come after. So when you meet to talk about those kinds of things with Rotary International, I'm just one of the many, many stories of lives that you're investing in. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna share the screen here with some slides. Here we go. So as Tony said, I came out with a book last week on boundaries, the Boundaries Workbook. And a couple of years ago, out of the blue, a publisher contacted me, and their model is that they research what people are Googling for, what people seem to be interested in, and then they find suckers to write books about it. And so this is now the 3rd book that I've written for this publisher. They tell me, here's what we're looking for, and then I do it. So that's the deal. It's and I was particularly interested. They gave me some choices. I was particularly interested in boundaries because you know, it just comes up all over the place. It comes up in church, it comes up in family, it comes up in the community, in the workplace. So if everybody can mute themselves, that'll help.
Yeah. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. All right.
Okay, so start with a story. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Birmingham, Alabama, visiting my sister, and we went to a minor league soccer game. And we were outside the gates, and the national anthem came on. We'd run a little bit late. When the national anthem comes on, what I do is I stop whatever I'm doing. I stop talking, I face the flag, and I pay attention until the national anthem's over. I don't know if other people should do that. That's up to them, but it is what I do. A little ways into the national anthem, these 2 guys ambled up to me and they wanted to know if I wanted their spare tickets. I don't know if they were selling or giving or anything, but whatever was happening with them, I was paying attention to the national anthem. So I lifted my hand, you know, and smiled. They tried again to engage me in conversation. And again, I sort of lifted my hand. And then again, they kept coming. They were trying to pull me into conversation. And I said, a little bit irritated, I'm listening to the national anthem. Now, and then they backed off. I think it was almost like I had barked at them. My deep social programming for being nice, for being friendly, when somebody comes up, would have had me drop what I was doing, turn to them and engage them about their agenda, which was whatever they were talking about with their spare tickets, rather than keeping on with my agenda, which was to pay respect during the national anthem. Respecting and connecting with others is also part of my life's agenda. So it's not like it was a simple choice or I just want to be gruff every time somebody comes up. But either way, it was a choice. It wasn't something that I had to do one way or the other. So it was something where I was consciously choosing. In a way, this is a trivial example. The world won't turn on whether I listen to the national anthem or talk to some strangers about spare soccer tickets. But in another way, it is existential. Who makes the choices for how I'll behave? Is it me? Is it other people? Who sets my boundaries? Sometimes it's not somebody coming up and breathing in my face like these two guys at the soccer game. Sometimes what sets my boundaries is old expectation, old stories of how things are supposed to be or how I'm supposed to be. Like maybe in your family, you were the go-getter or the peacemaker or the invisible one or the hero or the scapegoat. And so you act like that for the rest of your life as if you were programmed into it. Or maybe you have ideas about how somebody in your position at work or in the community should act. And so you allow those ideas to govern your behavior. Whatever the story and wherever it came from, it still falls to each of us to take responsibility for our choices, to say, this is what I will do and this is what I won't do. And that's where boundaries come in. So boundaries get a bad reputation. People like to talk about them in theory. People like to talk tough. But when they're happening in real life, boundaries are not popular. People who set clear boundaries seem standoffish or uncooperative or even rude. It's like people who live by clear boundaries are living by the word no, walking through life just saying no, no, no at every turn. But here's the main thing I want you to hear today. Boundaries are the way to say yes in your life. If you want to save up for vacation, you may need to stop going by Starbucks so often, or may need to wait on upgrading your car. If you're going to finally write that book, you may need to delete your social media accounts. If you're going to grow in your relationship with your partner or spouse, you may need to decline some opportunities at work. To accomplish our goals, to pursue the life that we're after, to be the person you're trying to be, requires focus and grit and faith and resilience and all of that. But the big important yes, the yes that you're after, will require you to say no to all those hundreds of trivial things that nibble away at you. So in the end, boundaries aren't a matter of just going around saying no. Boundaries are what's required of life that's serious about a commitment to a big yes or two. So this is a picture of contested lands on the border between Georgia and Tennessee. In the early 1800s, some sloppy surveying work inadvertently gave Tennessee more land than was intended, including precious access to water around Nickajack Lake. At the time, Georgia signed off on it, but ever since 1887, and as recently as up to this past decade, they've been trying to get it back. This isn't merely a question of accurate map making. What the lawmakers in Georgia and Tennessee both know is that state borders define the area under the state's control. A state border says, on this side of the line, we set the rules. On that side of the line, you do. Boundaries work the same way. They articulate what's mine and what's yours, what I make decisions about, what I do not make decisions about. Now, I may have opinions about what's over there, outside my realm of governance, but what's within my realm of governance is more than an opinion. It's a choice. It's a responsibility. That has to do with my time, my body, my money, my particular role in the workplace. When you start listening for it, it's amazing how muddy people let these boundaries get. A particular villain in this muddiness is the word we. The word we sounds so friendly, so inclusive, but when it comes to collaborating, the word we often brings confusion, like we have a problem. Well, do we? Or do I have a problem with you? Or am I noticing something that is your problem? Or we need to figure this out. Well, let's get clear. What's my part and what's your part? The word we often leaves everyone included and no one responsible. People avoid being clear on boundaries because it can be uncomfortable to face the disappointment of others or the upset or even disapproval of others. We'd rather not face the anxiety we feel with our ambivalence, wondering if we went too far or if our boundaries were cruel. Here's how I think about it. If somebody handed me a big bowl of warm garbage for dinner, I would have no trouble turning them down, saying, no, thanks, not for me. I'm very clear that I don't eat garbage for dinner. I'm so clear I don't even have to think about it. The same is true of clear boundaries. If I've really put my thinking into it, if I've really gotten clear about what's mine and what's not mine, when somebody comes toward me with a request or a demand, or when something pops up demanding my time and attention, it doesn't require a whole lot of rigmarole and long discernment or negotiation. It gets to be as simple as turning down a warm plate of garbage. So there are three types of boundaries: rigid, porous, and healthy. When somebody has had muddy boundaries or poor boundaries for a long time, often when they start setting boundaries, they can snap all the way to the other direction and become rigid and rule bound, as if boundaries were unbreakable and inflexible. Rigid boundaries often are brittle. So somebody might make some big declaration, but that the information changes, the landscape shifts, and they find themselves defending an unwise decision. Porous boundaries are more familiar. It's the doormat approach to life. It's somebody who's saying, oh, whatever you want, as long as you're happy, or I would do this if only those people didn't do this or that. It is to concede governance over one's life to others. Healthy boundaries, different from rigid and porous, are clearly defined, responsive to the situation, and revised on examination. In the short term, in the moment, not having boundaries can seem friendly and warm, a way to connect. Oh, sure, I'll do that. Sure, I'll serve on that committee. Sure, I'll pick up that task. Sure, I'll do this or that or anything you ask. My answer is always yes. In the short term, that always sounds good. In the long term, though, clear boundaries are kinder and better for relationships. I once consulted with a construction company out west whose owner couldn't clearly or wouldn't clearly define the bonus structure for two divisions in his company. In the short term, this allowed everybody coming into his office to think that he was on their side. But at the end of the quarter, word would get out that he had allocated bonuses according to who pressured him the most. So the short-term good feeling was replaced by a lack of trust. When he was able to define clearer boundaries and stick by them, here's how things are going to go, the trust in the company began to grow. Not that everybody liked what the decision was, but they knew that they could count on it and organize their behavior and choices around something consistent. I think of the well-defined life and the well-defined posture like being a lighthouse in the fog, sending out a clear, consistent signal so that others in motion around me can make clearer decisions about how to relate to me or if to relate to me at all. I thought this picture was funny because it looks very dangerous to be hand painting highway stripes. So none of us can start over from scratch. If we're interested in setting boundaries, we don't get the clean slate. So we're here in the middle of life, and maybe our boundaries haven't been what we wish they were. It may seem that we've just committed ourselves, gotten hung up to some unsustainable arrangement, but feel stuck because it's what we've agreed to for so long in our marriage or at work or so forth. A simple exercise can be to draw a line down the center of a piece of paper. On the left column, you can write what I will do. On the right column, you can write what I will not do. This is not what I would like to do and what I would not like to do, or not what I wish I could do, but what I will do, what I won't do on those two columns of paper. A couple of years ago, I realized I'd gotten myself into the position of being tech support for a nonprofit organization in Oak Ridge. And if you know anything about me, you know that if I'm the person advising people on technology, something has gone seriously wrong. I wanted to quit. I thought, well, I'm just going to tell them I'm done. But the organization meant a lot to me. So I went through this exercise, what I will do, what I won't do. what I can do is connect people with each other. You know, I've got relationships in town. That's what I'm happy to do. What I won't do is teach people how to restart their computer and download programs and those kind of silly things that I've gotten myself into. So this exercise was a much more specific way of defining my commitment and my posture in that volunteer setting. Communicating new boundaries when you've already agreed to something, renegotiating what you'll do can be a challenge. So here are my 5 favorite words for this situation. You ready? You know, I've been thinking. You know, I've been thinking. You know, I've been thinking is a way to reopen a topic that was formerly closed. It's a way to signal that you're mindfully adjusting your commitment. It doesn't require you to blurt out or to mysteriously begin behaving in some other way or to be a kind of a herky-jerky character, but just to sit down and say, you know, I've been thinking about my commitments, and I've let myself get into things and ways of acting that just don't hold true to my principles. So here's what you can expect out of me going forward. That kind of thing. So I don't know what it is you're wanting to say yes to in life. Maybe a relationship that hasn't gotten enough of your attention or energy, or maybe a life project that will be part of your legacy, or maybe your faith life, or maybe just more time in your day to catch your breath and reflect. Whatever it is you're wanting to commit your yes to is going to mean being clear and tenacious about setting and keeping boundaries so that this thing you've been wanting doesn't end up eroded by the frittering things you never intended to govern your life. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Good luck. That's the talk.
Jake, thanks. And we're going to open it up for questions for a few minutes, and we do have time. I forgot to mention that you were a previous member of our club. Thank you. And
that's right.
In your new life, we'll love to have you back if you're interested. So just keep that in mind. Any questions out there? Everybody's still on mute too, so if you do have questions,
where do you get where do you get the book?
It's on Amazon.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good thinking. Wow. I got to get a piece of paper.
It's important. I think I'm glad you reminded all of us of this, because you get in over your head and you feel like you're cheating if you don't do everything that could be done, but you can't live that way. So,
you know, I've been thinking about something. Oh.
That's right.
I need to practice that line.
Well, and there's a lot of exercises in the book to kind of think through things. You know, you were giving an overview, Jake, but that's one of the, I mean, anything that anybody suggests to people has to have a way to do it. Rather than if you don't have a way to implement something, it's like, oh, you should do this. And oh, you should do this is way different than here are things you can consider doing or can learn from to do it. So that's one of the things I liked a lot about it.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think it's really helpful to start small and specific. I was talking with somebody yesterday who was sort of despairing that her life hadn't turned around the last couple of weeks, and she'd been thinking about boundaries. And you know, I think I've been there too, just thinking, how long is this going to take? And you know, so to pick a particular role or relationship, or to even pick you know, if there's going to be a family visit. Do some thinking about it. What are some intentions? What are some goals about? I always think Thanksgiving is a great place to practice being a grown-up around people who knew you when you were 8 and younger. So, you know, finding a particular place, being specific, and you know, and then chipping away at it.
Jake, I was remembering back to when you were in our club and we were meeting out at the Flatwater Event Center out there. And you and I were part of a skit that was talking about how to appropriately ask someone to be a club member and inappropriately to be. And there were very clear boundaries, and we had shirts on, and you wore this mustache and you were the bad guy. You and I were on the bad guy team, bribing people to join our Rotary Club, but tying that back into what you're talking about now, these clear boundaries. And, right now, we're all faced there's a lot of fluidity, a lot of ways that things are going wrong, and maybe we can help them go right. But I do have very fond memories of that boundary skit that we did way back. I don't know how many years ago, but I still have the shirt.
That's great. Yeah. There's a quote that I cannot track down. It's Mary Shelley or Benjamin Franklin, or it's attributed to different people, but it's a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And the idea that, somebody coerced into compliance might go along with you in the short term, but that is different from allowing and encouraging each person's freedom and responsibility to decide for themselves. So the posture of invitation and of, allowing and even challenging somebody to make a choice, whether it's to join Breakfast Rotary or, to do anything, even if their answer is disappointing or not what I wanted, just in the long term builds these relationships with more integrity.
One of the ways I found to say no is to begin with, I'm really honored that you would ask me to do that.
I bet this club could put together a whole handbook on how to deal with being invited into leadership positions that you're not so sure about.
Well, that's a good follow-up maybe for Lydia's list of things we need to do within Rotary. So there, which will we do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, very good. I don't know if you'll stay on for a few minutes after, if anybody else wants to talk, Jake, but
I have a
first of all,
question.
go ahead.
It's Christina. Jake, I know that you, like our daughter, is a pastor who has been leading the flock for a long time. And it's a very big decision for you to have made, in my opinion, as a pastor's mom, to leave that leadership role and to take on this new role. And I wonder if you can help us in understanding how you did that.
Sure. I got the idea about a year ago that I could probably stay at the church until I retired, and that wouldn't be good for me, and it really wouldn't be good for the church. That we could just coast from here on out. Things are going well. It's, everybody's happy and healthy, and that sent a chill through my spine because I don't think that that's what life asks us to do. So. Things are happy and healthy at the church. We've had a year for them to plan the transition and for me to plan my transition. So I think things will continue to be, it's a solid group of folks, and people are really stepping up. About 10 years ago, I got a therapy degree in marriage counseling, and that quickly turned into primarily clergy coaching and working with congregations, which turned into working with nonprofits, and then has turned into working in the for-profit sector. And so it is still talking with people about meaning and purpose and relationships. It just means less volunteer recruitment for committees and fewer emails, at least for a little while. So, I will miss a lot of the, there is an intimacy in the pastoral role of being with people in their, in their hardest times. So, there are parts that I will miss, and I know that already. And it also seems like a great adventure. Half the time these days, I don't know what I'm doing, and I love that.
Thank you. I have, like Emily, fond memories of your bringing your little one to Rotary. And it was at a time when most men weren't responsible for their child's care early in the morning. And you set a magnificent example. And would love to know, how old is that child and what is that child doing right now?
Yeah, that's Gus, my older son. He's a junior at Oak Ridge High School. He's on the soccer team, and we've been touring colleges, which he'll apply to this fall. So he's ready to be launched.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let's end the formal part of the meeting now. Jake, again, thanks for doing this. I'm glad it worked out. It's a great book, value for a lot of people.